Hi, I'm Ethan Wong, and today I'm here with Nkosi Nkululeko.
Yes. Hello. Nice to be here with you, Ethan. Yeah, my name is Nkosi. Uh, I'm a writer, musician, chess player, and from Harlem. That's another like major thing I like to talk about. Um, and yeah, I mean, like born and raised in Harlem, and I think that's kind of like man, all I can kind of share now is like at the top of my head. I was like, oh man, well, I'm going to share about myself. But yeah, I think that's good. I'm good with that.
Yeah, all right, then we can get straight into the questions then.
Mhm.
Then I'd like to ask, when did you first when you first come upon poetry, fall in love with it, and why did you decide to write it instead of just reading it?
Yeah, so poetry is all like has always been a part of my life. My parents are artists and it's just part of the culture that I was raised around. Their friends also artists of like many different mediums, and but like poetry, um since I was born, to be honest, I can probably just say like since I was born, like a woman had wrote um a poem for me. Ishe, she had like written a poem for me, Song for Nkosi. And so that was a poem that like when I was able to finally like learn how to read and recite, that was a poem I used to like, perform at little gatherings here and there when I was like a kid. And so that's kind of like, I guess that would probably be like where it probably started, and it's just always circulated throughout my life. And it just kind of like only started to take it seriously in different phases, or like, mid-teens, kind of like that. I started to take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this, but I wanted to ask, so how do these other mediums, well, first of all, what other mediums do you pursue? And also, how do you think those other mediums differ from poetry?
Yeah. So music. I love jazz. Like played it since I was a kid, and uh, other mediums like art was also like a big part of my life. Loved creating. Went to in Harlem. There's a place, Children's Art Carnival, that had like amazing teachers that like I still think about the process of going through a variety of different workshops, from like photography to comic book making and like multimedia art. And so um, it's kind of like a mishmash of a lot of different things. And remind me the last part of the question, like how do they
How do they differ
what
from
intermingle?
poetry? How do you think, what
Yeah, how
makes
do
poetry special, I guess, in that respect?
yeah in a way, I guess as the older I get, sometimes it feels like the differences start to become a little bit more vague and not really so distinct. I'll say the difference for me is that words and language kind of like allow me, is like a linguistic lens to express what those other mediums are also expressing too. Like, music is expressing certain emotional and mental like forms of like life experiences. And I think that language kind of like allows you to attempt to put the words to that same type of feeling.
Yeah, and so I wanted to kind of touch on this because you said that you would like recite the poem that that lady had written for you in front of gatherings and stuff. So for you, growing up with poetry, was did you see it as like a proclamation to which you express to other people, or did you see it as a confession, or where you would like express your emotions to yourself? Like, what is
Mm.
kind of the way you perceived it over time?
Yeah, this is a question that I'm sort of still halfway navigating. Like when we think back on our lives, we kind of like come to different conclusions about like why we did things. And I think because art and just in general, the different arts like have been just so naturally like part of my life. I think naturally sometimes it I think naturally it like there are certain moments where when performing uh I guess a lot of times it might end up being like a proclamation because this is something I do just naturally. So like if I'm in front of people, in front of an audience, like this is going to be a proclamation because I'm already kind of like talking to myself through art, like just on a daily basis. But that sometimes like gets into certain gray areas and yeah, I mean, so it's kind of like it's a mixture, but I think like when I kind of like was in front of people, it did end up being more, um, proclaiming like some like performative, it had certain performative reasons when in front of people, because it wasn't necessarily performative when I was by myself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, kind of getting off of that then, so in general, what do you kind of write about in your poems or otherwise, I guess?
A lot of different things. Really just like any old thing. I mean, because it was just like because it's like a natural form of expression. I think like like kind of like went from talking about being like moving your bowels in the bathroom to like I don't know talking about some chess theory, which I love actually. I'm pursuing more often recently the past few years. But yeah, it just like ranged from anything to everything, and like kind of like is almost like a diary in a way because I was not good at keeping a diary, but I think like poems and art was kind of like another way of documenting anything that was like on my mind. So I can't really like pinpoint like what I talk about. I mean, I guess I could bring up a few themes like family, mother-son relationship, um, memory, regret sometimes, but those things just flow in and out of any topic that I happen to be like that happens to be on my mind.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something where it's a very interesting, or I should say, it's a very fulfilling almost purpose of poetry to serve kind of as a chronicle for whatever it may be that you're kind of feeling at the moment, whatever interests you at the moment. I know there's a lot of poems written about just some random thing that a poet has found. Maybe they read about it or they suddenly discovered it out in the wild. I think that's really one of the main functions of poetry. And I think it's a really good function of poetry just because it's short, it's succinct, but it's also very emotionally like satisfying in the way that you write a poem as opposed to maybe a journal entry.
Right, right.
Yeah. And so just adding on to that, do you, so I'm sure this happens to you at least in some respect, where sometimes you'll like have the urge to write, but you can't really figure out what you want to write about. Or honestly, with any of your beings about like you need to produce, but you don't know what to produce about. So that basically I'm just asking, what do you do about writer's block, right?
Right. Yeah. That. Oh man. Another difficult question because that's something I was still that I was still kind of like trying to figure out whenever it comes. Yeah. I mean, like I think when I was starting to get really serious about writing, and when I guess when you have certain people, you start to read and you see like all their work ethic. I think there's a certain period where writer's block wasn't necessarily a thing. Like, you can just continue just writing like, oh, I'm just gonna put something on the page. But then I don't know, over time, like writer's block, I feel is almost necessary to like give that moment of not hesitation, but just that moment of reflection of like, 'cause, I mean, I think at least for me, right at my point in time right now, like I might change my answer like next week or whatever. But I feel that so far, it feels that that when I'm not being totally, I guess, honest about certain tensions in my life, or it doesn't have to be tensions, but like just certain things that I'm not honestly addressing in my personal life. I feel like those are the moments that I'll probably get writer's block, and I think those moments in time and space is kind of like a great time and period for you like reflect on your own trials and errors, or the trials and errors that kind of like overlap with yours, and just give you a great period to just sit and think about like the things that you're struggling with, not for the sense, but not for the sake of the poem, but really just for the sake of kind of like trying to get a little bit closer to figuring out this thing that you can't even name or even talk about. So I think more often I'm like realizing like when I'm having writer's block, I'm probably not addressing something, or not, confronting something that has like somewhere deep in the gut, wherever it is, and I kind of like just let it rock, if I have writer's block, I have writer's block. And luckily, like with other mediums like music or chess, I can kind of like turn to these other mediums that is not using language, and inadvertently it kind of like leads me even back to language in a unique way.
Yeah, I think definitely there are times where you just have to pivot. You kind of have to let it sit for a while. And I find that a lot of times when I have writer's block, you talking about it really reminded me. When I have writer's block, sometimes it'll be after the writer's block, then I feel as if there's been a shift in the way I kind of address my work. There's been a pretty big shift oftentimes in how I kind of approach even just starting or the subject of a poem. So I think that's pretty valuable to realize that it's not necessarily a period of stagnance, because you were probably in some way evolving during that long period of inactivity, right?
Right.
And so one last question, which I want to ask, which is, I noticed you call yourself a poet, writer, musician, like a chess player. How did it get to the point? And you mentioned also where you were getting serious about writing. So at what kind of point, what do you think happened in you where you were suddenly, or maybe not suddenly, where you were one day like, I am for sure a poet now, like I am a writer?
Yeah, it's hilarious that some of these questions that you pose, it feels like I'm currently sort of moving in the opposite direction, because it's like these titles are definitely helpful for if I'm like trying to like teach someone something, or like promote my work and be like, oh, if you want to like learn chess or whatever, like I'm a chess player. But I was I was confident about calling myself these things when it came to for self promotion, and when it came to a point, if I was like getting certain forms of acknowledgement, whether awards or whatever, and it feels like, oh yeah, you're doing this thing, you call yourself that. But as things start to merge, and as all these mediums start to like really merge, and kind of like lead to not complex, but just everything is integrated in a beautiful way. So I don't really even sometimes know if I really want to be calling myself a poet, as opposed to like a multidisciplinarian or something, because everything's feeding one another, and it's kind of like just shaping my mind of like how I'm absorbing information, learning about my craft, and all these things. I feel like if I call myself a poet, later on down the line, it will just like, it, it'll just maybe place certain forms of limitations on what I can potentially do, or what I would like to call my activity. But poet is a very easy, and I probably will use it to some extent, but I feel sometimes uncomfortable moving forward, especially as all these mediums start to work together even more seamlessly. I'm like, I don't really know if I really would call myself that. So
Yeah, but I think there's definitely a value to having all of these different pursuits, especially because that really broadens your horizons, and not limiting yourself is pretty important. So I definitely see your point there.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I don't know what the answer is, but I appreciate the question.
All right. If you're ready, we can get into your poem.
Yeah. So since I like mentioned chess, I was telling you I was like trying to figure out what poems we even share. Um, I will. The light is bright. I'm going to share. I'm going to read this. So it's a square poem. People won't be able to see it, but this this square poem is like, well, when I first started working on these square poems, they weren't inspired by Lewis Carroll because I didn't know that he actually had a poem like this. But you know, he had a like a 6x6 grid, and you know, it's called a square poem. And basically, this is a poem that can be read both horizontally and vertically, and is it's kind of like in a somewhat some family of the contrapuntal, but instead of having two columns that bleed into each other, it's like literally all these words are, you know, are being worked doubly, you know, double time. So this square poem I have is an 8x8, you know, to fit the whole chess theme. Um, and yeah, so I'll just start off. So the chessman. Chessmen quiet after revising illusions. Their innumerable identities are sacrifices, justifying our blessed ignorance. Fears create figures mourning fabricated angels. God numbers these angles, theorizing the pains. Minds of bloodied anxieties embody warfare. Estranged militia navigate games, are unveiled symbols. Their pieces, praising reality and empathy while dismissing loss, hauntingly incomplete as death before dying. Are witnessing silenced histories, false comfort, inspiring pained resignations. And so this now, I'm gonna read the poem vertically. Chessmen are figures theorizing warfare, their loss, witnessing quiet sacrifices, mourning the estranged pieces, hauntingly silenced after justifying fabricated pains. Militia praising incomplete histories, revising our angels. Minds navigate reality as false illusions. Blessed God of gains and death, comfort their ignorance. Numbers bloodied our empathy before inspiring innumerable fears. These anxieties unveiled while dying. Pained identities create angles, embody symbols, dismissing our resignations. So yeah, that's the chess poem. And did you was it like one more? Like how was it one or two that you wanted?
You can have we have time, so you can read the second one if you want.
Cool. So yeah, I'll just read this other one. Oh man, yikes! Now I'm like, yeah. All right, so I'm just gonna read this one since it's in front of me. I did not like organize the poems, the poem that I actually wanted to read, but this one is called The Square. So sort of like speaking of the contrapuntal, again, this is sort of like another visual poem that people won't be able to see, but think of, I have a contrapuntal that I put in the shape of a square. And so, you know, you have like, you know, a couplet here, a couplet here, a couplet down here, and a couplet over here, and a chess position in the middle. And so I'll just read it. Square. Opening my door, I find my mother patiently wounding the heart with cruel precision. Actually, hold on, let me read it again because it's supposed to actually go in a circle. My head is gonna be like doing some twists and turns, so it's gonna look a little silly for right now, but because I can't do the thing, let me just try and read it. Opening my door, I find my mother patiently waiting for me to forgive my father for making me content with solitude, regret, My My hauntings are damaging the ways I remember, each memory wounding the heart with cruel precision. Yes, I'm learning what it means to obey a square, reminding how I'm still my father's image. We're mirroring shapes, forming the guilt we bury instinctually. Opening my door, I find my mother patiently wounding the heart with cruel precision. Yes, I'm damaging the ways I remember, each memory mirroring shapes, forming the guilt we bury, instinctually waiting for me to forgive my father for learning what it means to obey a square, making me content with solitude, regret. My hauntings are reminding how I'm still my father's image. We're mirroring shapes, forming the guilt we bury, instinctually wounding the heart with cruel precision. Yes, I'm wounding the heart with cruel precision. Yes, I'm wounding the heart with cruel precision. So yeah.
Thank you. Those were great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for let me read it.
All right. Do you have any closing remarks? Or anything you want to promote?
Wow, promotion is like, I'm trying to get better at it. Promotion, oh man, so like I really love like chess, sometimes almost more than poetry sometimes, but no, I probably want to say that, but actually, I don't know, maybe they're all the same. All that to say is that if I'm trying to promote something is that I love chess and I love teaching chess, and chess has been part of my life, and I probably have to say that I'm like fairly good at it. So I'm definitely always trying to hold space to teach people, to hold communities, to yeah, really talk about chess if they want to learn. And like I can be found on like, you know, Instagram, Twitter, Music Man Nkosi is usually where you can find me, or you can probably type my name. You might find me like that as well. But yeah, so that is pretty much it. And I just want to say, I hope people are playing games and like, you know, just just playing around. It sounds so silly when I say it out loud. I'm like, this is not a poetic thing to say, but yes, please just, hopefully people are out there just playing.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.